Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and my co-host for this segment is Alex Kane. Welcome back, Alex.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
This is Calling on Kenobi, our mythic deep dive into the Obi-Wan show on Disney Plus, and this episode is covering part 3. And we cover this show from a meta-mythic perspective, as I said. And there's a lot going on in this show, and it's been telling it on multiple levels. So I'm really, really excited to get into it. Just a reminder to like and subscribe or comment if you happen to be listening to this on YouTube. It helps others find the show. And we will be getting into it, but not before some pre-show thoughts. What are your thoughts, Alex?
I stayed up late to watch this last night because I didn't want anything to get spoiled, and I'm so glad I did because, holy smokes. I mean, you start with like another sort of prayer to Qui-Gon, and then you have the, straight into Darth Vader stuff, and it's a very interesting episode. It feels sort of the most like if you crack open like a book of myths or like, sort of like biblical type stories, or it feels the most sort of like a myth in like a collection or something that of sort of any of the Star Wars episodes we've seen for a while. I feel like
a really long time. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons why that's happening and why it feels that way and why it jives that way. I absolutely agree with you that it feels very mythic just in its telling and like what they go through.
Yeah. It's sort of weird and creepy and it does some things we haven't seen before, and then it does some things we've like definitely seen before in a really meaningful way that we're seeing again. It's fun. It feels sort of like a, Charles Soule Vader comic, which is a compliment coming from me. I happen to really like that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, no. And also it continues to feel very The Last Jedi. And I've been thinking about this since we recorded our last episode. And it's because the symbolism that they're using, the symbolism and sort of the aesthetic of how the symbols are presented on screen is incredibly consistent, like The Last Jedi. And I think that's due to having one director, Deborah Chow, being at the helm. And so we get repetitive symbolism. So it drives really, really well and resonates back and forth inside of our subconscious, which is fun.
Yeah. It's also got a touch of that cinema verite style that George Lucas was such a fan of. There's sort of some shaky cam and some weird little stylistic quirks in this episode that I think people are kind of like scratching their heads about. And to me, it feels kind of like that documentary style that, George was into. A little bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when they're in the field or like when they're up close to Obi-Wan's face and stuff like that. Like there was a little bit of like that feel. Yeah. This episode changed my opinion of something in Star Wars, which is hard to do, I would say. I feel very locked in my opinions on like kindness and, it's about compassion fundamentally and love for others. And there's this concept that came out of the prequels, and it's subtle how they've gone about saying it. But I think that they're actually saying that Obi-Wan was wrong about something. And it is one of the most memed lines in all of Star Wars. And so it's really interesting for me to reevaluate it. I'll get into it when we're getting into the episode. So just a little sneak peek of how my thoughts are working. I also want to say that overall in Obi-Wan Kenobi's huge, the entire length of the saga or the entire 6 movies, Obi-Wan's journey, he is at his catabasis stage, which is that he's at his lowest point. I would also argue that Anakin is also at his lowest point. They're both spiritually dead, right? And they're facing each other off at this spiritual dead point. But in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, he's kind of at a different point. He hasn't actually reached his lowest point just yet. I actually think that's going to come next episode. He's on his road of trials. So this is when you run into supernatural helpers. You discover that there are helpers everywhere, right? Even ones that you don't expect or ones that help you, but there's a cost to it. It's all about, traveling to new locations. And in the end, here's a quote from Campbell himself on, the road of trials and how we have these like iconic heroes that end up going off and going on these journeys. And when the hero undertakes himself the perilous journey into the darkness by descending either intentionally or unintentionally into the crooked lanes of his own spiritual labyrinth, he soon finds himself in a landscape of symbolic figures, any one of which may swallow him up. So that's from Hero with 1,000 Faces. And that's where we're at, right? Like, so the road of trials is primarily a way for you to be in kind of like a twisty turny path, but it's a metaphor for journeying into your subconscious and having to face the things that you have buried deep. And this is all about shadow integration. So it's why we do this, why we go through this is to shift your patterns of behavior, right? So he's been stuck this whole time to transform sadness into a deeper connection into oneself and how one fits into the universe. So we definitely see this transmutation of grief, of him being stuck where he was in Tatooine, into a sense of purpose through the eyes of Leia, and turns fear into insight and understanding. Also finding compassion, empathy, and acceptance for the darkest parts of ourselves and the things that have been the former parts of ourselves that have been hurt. And we're going to go into that, but it all happens in this episode. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any thoughts on that before we get going?
Oh, I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about just how much Obi-Wan is afraid of Anakin Skywalker right now. There's sort of like a couple, like deer in headlights when they first see each other.
Yeah.
It's like running into your like ex-girlfriend 5 years later and you just sort of like do a double take and then, run the other direction or something. And, there's so much that these two men would want to say to each other. And yet Vader seems intent on saying nothing. Like, he's trying to...
he says stuff.
he does.
Says stuff.
He's sort of, in the beginning, he's sort of like, clutching that machine part of him and trying to like hold steady, right? But then, Obi-Wan kind of pokes at him, intentionally or not. And it's fun to see that kind of back and forth where they sort of pick at each other's wounds and open one another up a little bit.
It was great. All right. So let's get into the show itself and start talking it through. We'll probably go in like sort of what happens order, maybe diverting a little bit just to make comparisons or parallels, etc. But one thing I wanted to point out is that there's this beautiful theme that plays over the masks and the Star Wars symbol, and it primarily has a flute associated over top of it. It's like above the sort of score that's happening. It's really nice. And it's the score that is most associated with the Star Wars theme that we hear in the shows. I think we hear it in almost every single show. It's kind of like the 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, I did. I noticed that this episode. Yeah, that was what plays over the Lucasfilm logo.
Yeah. And there's a flute Okay. Who is associated with the flute as a musical instrument?
I mean, what, Rey and Leia, probably?
Yeah. Both? Leia. I mean, Leia first, right? Yeah, sure, Leia.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And to me, that was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
And then we get into, the opening moments, and he is sitting in a kneeling position, much like Qui-Gon did in The Phantom Menace, waiting to confront Maul in that like forced field area just before he dies. And he's calling on Qui-Gon. And he says, "Are you there, Master?" And it flashes to these like sounds and these memories, like Anakin Skywalker is alive. And it flashes then at the same time to Vader being like locked into his walking coffin.
Yeah, suited up like Batman.
Yeah. With like all these like robot arms, like unplugging his cords, like the Matrix, and like, yeah. And there's a mythic component to this that I've talked about in the past, but I think it's worth bringing up again, that Anakin is kind of like Osiris, right? He's in this life, death, life cycle, but it's really, really small because he is almost ruminating between being born and dying every single day. Because he goes back to his bacta tank, which is sort of like the womb, and he looks like a newborn baby that's all like shriveled and wrinkled, like a really ugly baby. Really ugly baby. And then he dies immediately and is locked in a coffin that walks around. And every time he comes out of the water, because he's never really given an opportunity to live. And Osiris himself, as part of the Osiris myth, was killed by his brother Set, and sealed into a coffin that floated down the river, where Isis attempted to find him, and he ended up like being turned into a magnificent pillar, basically, that adorned a palace.
I feel like one of the first things Padme ever really tells Anakin about her like private self is like, "I love the water." Isn't that what she says? Anyway,
yeah,
made me think of that.
Yeah, and so like he's in a spiritual death every single time. He's stuck at this point, and he cannot grow and change. Right? He cannot transform. He cannot move past where he is. And that's why it's so important at the end of Return of the Jedi when his son takes his mask off, because then he's finally able to live again, ever so briefly.
Yeah.
It ends with Obi-Wan thinking very loud thoughts to himself, because he doesn't say it out loud. "He's coming, Master." Okay, let's talk about this.
Yeah, it's like an urgent, like, Qui-Gon, if you're going to answer, if you're going to show up, like, I could really use your guidance, like, right now, basically, right? And
yeah, Obi-Wan's afraid.
He's terrified of Anakin.
Yeah. And why is he terrified of Anakin Skywalker, who was his brother?
I guess like the big question mark in his mind must be like, is this my fault? Which Vader decides to give him a pretty clear answer to, which is fun because it's coming from Vader, and so we're forced to be skeptical. But yeah, he's terrified of the possibility that he left his student alone and at his moment of need, like at the galaxy's darkest hour, and ran off to chase some General Grievous. No,
I think Obi-Wan is straight up scared Anakin will kill him.
Oh yeah, he's also physically, he's still very much in a physical state of concern and existence. Yes. I put in my notes, he's far from the episode 4 moment of like, please kill me, I want you to do it. He's firmly in the material realm of like, he's gonna kick my ass, and he's got a red lightsaber probably, and this
is gonna hurt, and I probably deserve it.
he's probably gonna dip me in some fire. Spoilers. No, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, so and to me, like, he's coming master, and this is something that we all need to learn as humans, is that we can never escape our darkness, even if we don't know about it, right? Even if it's something, our shadow that was given to us. And this is something that we see with Leia and Ben in the sequel trilogy, is that they can never escape the shadow of Darth Vader. It's always been there, right? And it's Bloodline does a really great job. Shout out to Claudia Gray for being like one of the best storytellers in Star Wars, for telling Leia stories like nobody else. And it really just solidifies that, like, you cannot kill the darkness, right? He tried. Obi-Wan tried. He did. He literally, like, he couldn't kill him, but he was pretty much leaving him for dead. And you can't kill the darkness and the evil and the dark things that have happened to you. You can only integrate them and understand them, and in some ways have compassion for them and yourself. And that's what we need out of Obi-Wan. And he's just like not ready to be there yet, which is really good.
He needs to forgive himself, probably. It's probably a big crux of the whole thing. But
he needs to forgive himself for what happened. And he needs to have compassion for Anakin. That's important.
Yeah.
That's important, because then he has compassion for what has happened for Anakin and thus himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we get wonderful James Earl Jones's voice come out. So we get this scene where it's like, oh man, I had to get all dressed just to have a phone call because I can't take a phone call in my back to tank. Anyways.
That remote work life, yeah.
Yeah. So he gets the holo from Reva, third sister. There's this quick little moment, like, you know, we got to get him for what happened to the Grand. And she doesn't finish the sentence. I still think he's alive. I still think Palpatine's going to pull him back. He's the same guy. I just think, like, it's convenient to get him out of the way. I think he'll show up later on in this series, like later on, like 6.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. Yep.
Yeah, you don't bring in Ralph Friend. You don't bring in Rupert Friend and like off him in the second episode and not have him come back gloating. Anyways, he's not dead. That's what I say. And you know, we don't really get a sense of their relationship other than she feels okay to call him directly, and nobody else has his number, which is pointed out later. What did you think of this moment?
It was good. I mean, like, it doesn't explicitly confirm any of our speculation about the Vader stuff. But
do you want to go into that? Because we were tweeting about it all day, but let's talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, you know, I sort of made the joke that, like, Reva, you know, is basically an anagram for Vader minus the D, which would be Darth. So it kind of...
because she's not a Darth yet, right?
Yeah, like potentially she aspires to be a proper Sith Lord and serve at his side. You know, assuming that this Vader, you know, is still one who wants to, you know, usurp the Emperor and you know,
Vader,
like the Emperor.
Vader is moody a little bit and goes through changes and decides if he's on the side of Palpatine or not. Is it worth overthrowing him? I don't know. Not today. I'm tired. I'm going to go sit in my back tank.
Yeah. At this point, he's probably more ambitious than some of the later Vader stories where he's like, you know, where he's on Exegol doing weird stuff. At that point, he's just kind of like, whatever, man. Like, but I think, you know, at this point, he's pretty ambitious. He's cooperating with the Inquisitors. He's, you know, chasing Jedi across the galaxy and all these, you know, random weirdo characters.
He's only tried to resurrect Padme once. That's
yeah.
He's not at the second time yet.
Sure.
Fail me and you will not live to regret it. You know, you gotta say Vader at least is good at motivational speeches.
Yeah. He's a people manager for sure.
But this reminds me of something that people who are like suffering from depression or are really in a dark phase of their life tend to, it's very easy to slip into a place of, when I'm in pain, I want everybody else to be in pain too. And Vader literally makes his pain everybody else's problem. And that's the key, right? Like, he's literally like sort of a symbolic devil or demon on the galaxy that like is in pain, is suffering. He lives in hell. He literally lives in a hell planet with lava, the place of his downfall. He lives in the place of his biggest pain. He's in constant pain, and he makes it everybody else's problem. This is a big metaphor for how we, when we are experiencing pain, we bring that pain to others.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of what the horror equivalent of this would be. He's not really so much a vampire all the time, but he's I don't know if he's sort of more like the Hellraiser type of thing.
Yeah, I've experienced this with some people who when they're like not doing well mentally, they make it everybody else's problem. You know, and like, this is a big metaphor for the dark side being this internalized trap that is like the spiritual labyrinth, being stuck in it for as long as Vader has been stuck in it with no way out. This like maze of pain he's in the dark side is it. And Obi-Wan's in a maze of pain too. I don't want to discount that. Like, he's in the same place as Anakin. That's where he can see himself. And so when Obi-Wan is able to move past that is like the idea of like, Obi-Wan once thought as you did, Luke. Right. So it's really, really important to see that Anakin and Obi-Wan are in the same place right now in their spiritual journeys.
Yeah, they're ultimately victims of like the very same deceptions and the same war and the same, same Sith Lord,
and just how they've decided to handle it is different, right? Like,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But we are on this automated transport, and I think what's really, really interesting about this is that when you're on the road of trials, there are going to be situations where you're going to be forced to rest against your will, right? Like, and us psychologically, like when we're going through it, when we're going through a lot of different things all at once, and suddenly like, oh, we're being forced to like, not do something, right? It's important to take that time and actually like use it, rest during that period of time. So when Leia asks like, are we almost there? Very kid. I love this. Like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Can't we go any faster? Like, no, because you need time to rest throughout all of the challenges that you're going in. And it's like a trade route. So it is a road of trials. They are in the road. Question for you, Alex. What are these two trading? They're on a trade route.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
I mean, they're trying to they're trying to like trade for her safety, for hope.
Metaphorically, right? Like, we get this later. We get the answer later. So it's hope. Yeah. He's
hope.
Like, they're trading for hope, right? Like, so she's trying to give him hope in exchange for her safety.
Yeah.
It's a trade route. It's a trade route metaphor.
There's definitely a chain through like at least, 4 or 5 of the movies where, hope is what's being, the boon to the community, as you would say.
Yeah.
And it goes through Obi-Wan and Leia, basically from like, episode 3 to The Last Jedi, essentially, I think. Or something give or take.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Leia's the one that sends Rey to Luke, right? So it gets returned.
Yeah.
Rey
is like sort of the final link in that chain, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's important because like a route being part of the road that they're on and being a trade route is like, well, they're exchanging something, and she is teaching him something, and in exchange, he is giving her something. That's really, really important. And I love that he's like, I'm not in control of it. Yeah, because like the road of trials, like it's like Odysseus, right? Like on his journey and his adventure, where he's like blown about the ocean by angry sea gods. He can't control where he's going to go next, right? There is a sense of just being at the whim of the Force in this. And there is an illusion that we can control it, but in many ways we kind of have to just go with the flow.
Yeah. It's that really like Scylla and Charybdis or Rock in a Hard Place kind of thing where they're relying on the kindness of strangers and hoping that that imperial flag doesn't mean what they think it might mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then like she asks, can't you use the Force to make it faster? And it's like, that's not how it works. And this is totally reminiscent of Han and Finn on Starkiller Base. Like, that's not how the Force works, right? Yeah,
there's a lot of cute dialogue between like Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan 1977, and then like Han and The Force Awakens, and now like this Obi-Wan series where Han and Obi-Wan are still having that dialogue 45 years later.
Yeah, and like I love how Alec Guinness is like, or Han was like, the Force, that's not real. And Alec Guinness like proves him wrong. And then Han is able to hand that off. So it, like there's an interlacing happening in Star Wars that I really, really appreciate, that it feels internally consistent, and that lessons that are obviously being passed on later on in the series are being like the seeds of them are being planted here.
Yeah.
And that's nice. I really like that. And then it's like, that's not how the Force works. It's a feeling. This is like TLJ Luke all over again. I love it. And then, but what does it feel like? Well, have you ever been afraid of the dark? What does it feel like to turn the light on?
Yeah, and she says, I feel safe, I think. And he's like, that's what it feels like or something.
Yeah. What do you think of this?
It works on a few different levels. It's great. It ties into, various other Star Wars media, like you said. It goes back to that storytelling, that cliche of writers' workshops where they say, show, don't tell. And with magic, that is particularly useful because, I've never done magic and I don't intend to probably. But if I read just sort of like an instruction manual on how it works, that would mean less to me than like reading a really good, like rich description by like a Claudia Gray, Matthew Stover of the world, who can really like spin it into sort of like a sensory type thing. Also, it goes back to that Matt Martin from Lucasfilm. He's always talking about how we like to keep the Force mysterious. We want it to be magic. We want it to be kind of unknowable, which is kind of like a Campbell God transcendence thing, right? Where you don't want to be able to put it into words and write like, here's the Jedi instruction manual, like here's how you do it, guys, because that it's limiting. The Force is kind of the frontier in Star Wars. We have hyperspace, we have spice smugglers, and we have sort of like the world of Star Wars, and we kind of know how it works. We don't necessarily know all there is to know about the Force, as we learned in like Rebels and stuff like that. And, that's where it gets interesting,
So, Cliff's Notes, the Force is in all things. And so there is no difference in the Force between you, me, the rock, the tree. It is everything. And what does that mean fundamentally? It means that we are all, everything is interconnected. So when I do harm to another person or another thing, it is fundamentally harming myself.
Yep.
Right. And so what this means is we need to have compassion for every aspect of the universe, including ourselves, right? Compassion and love, right? Because the more we see that interconnection to the other things that exist in the universe, the more we are connected to those other things in the universe, the more we withdraw from it and are alone from those things or think ourselves separate from those things, the more that we are separate from those things and disconnected from the force. When he talks about turning on the life, I feel safe. It's really relief. It's hope. It's happiness. It's feeling like things are going to be okay, right? Like that's how you feel when the light turns on. But what is not said is how it feels when the darkness is all around you. Why are we afraid of the dark? Well, it's because we're alone and we don't know what is around us and we're trapped by the darkness. We're trapped by the darkness. And it's a really, really simple metaphor for being stuck in an overwhelming sense of not being able to escape. It's interesting, though, that you're less afraid when you're in the darkness with other people.
Yeah, the basically the foundational idea in Buddhism, right, is that concept of like dukkha. I hope I'm pronouncing that remotely right, but you know, the idea that life is suffering, and so when you can see another person and recognize that you know, I mean, I think you hear it in Obi-Wan's voice when he's like, "You're my brother, I loved you," you know. He's in as much pain as Anakin, you know, in some way, because, you know, he sees it. He feels it through the Force, presumably. You know, these guys are, you know, two halves. He just has
empathy. Yeah.
Right. It's a way to think about empathy, like this idea of we're all one, we're all on equal ground as beings in the same universe. It's a really beautiful, such an important idea. And it's not very popular.
No.
People don't like to think that we're all the same. But it would be better if we did.
I really like the overview effect that happens to astronauts that go to the International Space Station. You can Google it, certainly. But basically what happens is, and it's sort of a version of the Force, right? Or at least the philosophy of the Force, where you go up to the International Space Station and you see this giant blue planet, or this tiny blue planet, surrounded by darkness and stars. And you realize everything on that planet is the only thing that humanity has. And you're filled with a deep sense of love and wanting to protect every single piece of that blue planet. And I really, really love that. And I really wish more people could see the world from that perspective and understand that there is no difference between us. Those of us who live on this blue planet really need to take care of each other. This is all we have. And that's the sort of idea of the Force, is that everybody that lives in the galaxy, this is all we have, you know?
Yeah.
Just a quick note on Leia. She has, out of her bun, her braided bun on the top of her head, a singular braid that has fallen down from her unique hairstyle, and it's a Padawan braid because she is now Obi-Wan's second apprentice.
Yes.
Before Luke.
Yes, I felt this in a big way this episode. That's really what they're doing here, is they're saying
that she has been training with Obi-Wan, learning.
Yeah. You know, Rise of Skywalker was kind of sort of a left field sort of surprise. It was one of the sort of twists of the movie. And here we have it, like, you know, okay, let's like sort of, you know, give that the grounding that it needs to kind of to feel as beautiful as it was intended to, almost like to kind of, you know, see what it is from her, through her eyes. Right.
Yeah. And also I think it's just like a really wonderful way to show their interconnection and their history, and how much Leia has, I don't know, learned from Obi-Wan and because it's a master like apprentice relationship, the apprentice always teaches the master something.
Yeah.
Always brings something to the master. That's really, really important too. And I love that during this whole conversation, Obi-Wan is like mad that he's fixing a droid, but he does it anyways because it's a kindness and it brings Leia joy.
Yeah, I think I had some note about how through Leia, he is getting closer to that part of Anakin. Because Obi-Wan is famously like not a droids person, and Anakin very much was. So in fixing this droid for Leia, it feels like an act of kindness to Anakin by proxy.
Yeah,
right? It's really like a, making amends, at least on his end of the point of view. Just to he's making himself feel better, but he's doing something really kind and beautiful for Leia too.
And this is where compassion for others really leads to, is that you do services for others with no intent of return, just because it brings them joy.
Yeah.
Right. Or it helps them out, or it's what they need at that time. And that's how we hand the elixir to others, is giving them compassion, hope, and help out of their darkness.
And it shows like the complexity of like human relationships too, where like obviously Anakin and Obi-Wan did not leave things on the best of terms, but clearly Anakin had like such a, profound good impact on his life, that he would, he's sort of grown.
He's not going to abandon the kids.
Yeah. Or, and just like on the droid thing too. But yeah, it's, Obi-Wan in the show is he's broken and he's sad and he's not really sort of the hero that he needs to be yet. But like, he seems to have grown as a perceiver of things, even though he has, he's got some work to do in terms of his actions and how he handles like these trials. But
yeah, absolutely. But they arrive, because it's automated, they arrive at the Mapuzo mining system.
Mm-hmm.
And we get this like straight up like callback to, I did an episode on mining being the dark side and suffering as a metaphor in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I still love this episode that I did like a really long time. I'll link it in the liner notes in case you're interested in checking it out. But it's really, really important because Obi-Wan even points out that this used to be, fields and families and farmers. And now it's just strip mining, which is like many people view the worst kind of mining, right? Because it literally, you can't grow anything. It strips away the ground, and so nothing can grow there. Even it takes away the nutrients of the soil. It makes it dead. It's very an apropos metaphor for the dark side, and really it's a theme of like greed and hunger, and like from Lord of the Rings, Tolkien really used this as a metaphor for industrialization and how it brings us further away from nature and more towards civilization. But in Star Wars, in addition to the, like kind of the mechanism, like the mechanicalism and the dark side of that, it also kind of shows the idea that it's difficult to cultivate and harvest and have love if you're, basically just using up and extorting the resources of nature. Yeah.
The Empire just chews through worlds. I mean, you go from Ilum as like this holy site for the Jedi where they go to get their lightsaber crystals, and then it
to be Starkiller base
turns into a gun that gets blown up. Like it's like in Star Wars, it's very much it's like the Empire just sort of not valuing planets as sort of a metaphor for like the not valuing human life. which we certainly see throughout history. This whole thing too is like, it's like a classic theme in like Victorian art where industrialization leads people to paint these like sort of beautiful like landscapes and vistas as a reaction to like, the ugliness of the factories and the smoke and all that stuff. And yeah, you see that
it's created the vacation industry, you know, like, so you go off into the countryside to be at peace away from industrialization in the Victorian age.
Yeah, you see that sort of in Star Wars a lot, where like you have this like beautiful natural, sort of what do you call, like it's like one type of thing, like biome, like it's like an ocean planet or whatever, and then you have like the little Imperial base on the horizon with the little smoke rising out of it, kind of like marring the landscape. But from a mythic perspective, this is full understanding that we are now in the unknown too, right? So Campbell would draw these circles of the journey and just put a line through it, saying the hero goes from the known to the unknown. So as soon as he left Tatooine, he entered into the unknown, and that was very underworld feeling in the city that was always dark and you couldn't communicate out of it. But now we're on a different planet, on this road of trials that feels stripped bare, raw, and it's a deep reflection for the journey into the self, where you need to strip away your layers as well to fully discover who you are deep down inside. Yeah, there's that irony of like they try to give themselves like fake aliases of like fake names and fake relationship and a fake backstory, but they sort of end up revealing the truth about themselves because they just sort of spout it off, and there's a lot of meaning packed into that, so that's fun too. There
is. I have a lot of thoughts on that one.
Yeah.
You have a thought on Reva's name?
So Reva, I've just been turning that over and writing down anything that comes to mind, but obviously there's the Revenge, which we saw the Order 66 and things like that, but also there's the Italian word or the Italian phrase that keeps coming to mind, which is like that arrivederci, which is like until we meet again, which kind of ties into that whole notion that, Obi-Wan and Vader are having like a rematch or a couple rematches here. And then, and then they're going to see each other again on the Death Star. There's that sort of sense of.
And Reva is kind of like the lubricant or the path by which they are working. Like, again, we talk about threes in the show. She is the third point that is connecting them between to make a triangle. She's sort of
obsessed with both of them in different ways, and we kind of don't
ways.
We don't know the whole story there yet, so that's kind of fun.
She's interconnected between the two of them, which is awesome. So Leia and Obi-Wan arrive on the planet, and they walk down a road literally in grass, like it's like a footpath. It's really interesting. And we see a Jedi looking person standing off, kind of just out of sight, but Leia can't see this person. Okay, let's talk about it. I zoomed in. It's totally Hayden.
Yeah, it's definitely
it's Anakin in his like Clone Wars leather tunic. The last like outfit that he saw him in.
Kind of like the robe that he wore when he said goodbye and when they were kind of going off to do their spy on the Chancellor / hunt down General Grievous on Utapau. So good call.
And like I have theories on this, so let's talk it through a little bit. But Obi-Wan is so afraid to face this Anakin, because this is the one that has the face of his brother, and it's really interesting because, as we know, fear is the path to the dark side. but Obi-Wan is nothing but fear.
Yep.
And so this is giving us a sort of roadmap out of the darkness. My hope is that this is giving us a roadmap from like a story perspective out of the darkness that is facing Obi-Wan.
Yeah, this idea that there's still good in him, like Padme said, and all that, and that Obi-Wan, and then eventually the twins will kind of get around to that. And you're right. This could be like a symbol of that, sort of like seeing him roughly the way we do at the end of like the DVD Blu-ray version of Return of the Jedi, basically. Hayden with his long hair and everything.
Yeah, it was good to see Hayden's long hair potentially with his hood up. I actually think that this is Vader's subconscious. And I think we're going to get, and fingers crossed, we're going to get a full weird in the Force fight.
Yeah, I had the thought of the projection idea, since we've kind of toyed with that with Luke and Leia. That's it works on a couple different levels too, because this is sort of a human thing that happens. I might sound real cuckoo here for a second, but there's that thing that happens where there was like a kid who died in my high school when I was a teenager. And, I don't think I've ever hallucinated in my life, but you're out like driving around and you see somebody drive by and you look over and you swear you see that person who you did not see, but it's just that kind of your mind filling in that blank and throwing that in there just to mess with your head. Little things like that.
You saw somebody that looked like that, or you expected to see them because you were looping in that part of your subconscious at that moment.
It's a freaky thing that happens, and it's only happened once or twice, but it is like that kind of fun idea of things in stories work well when they're kind of functioning on two or more levels. And I think this is one of those weird little images that we haven't really seen happen in Star Wars a lot. And it kind of gets you talking. I guess the closest thing to it is just the weirdness of Luke's appearance on Crate, how he's using like the wrong lightsaber. He sort of looks like Kylo would expect him to look, and not really like how he should look, things like that. So,
Leia can't see him either. So I think that this is like, I talked about this in my speculation episode, that I wanted something like this. And I think that this is the start. I think that there'll be more. And I truthfully believe that this is the way that we'll get Anakin, Vaderkin, and Obi-Wan actually talking about some really important things similar to the Force connection. I don't feel like it's the dyad Force connection between Rey and Kylo. I think that was unique.
Yeah.
I think that this is more like Vader's connection to Luke, where he projects his thoughts into his brain, but I think it's actually almost subconscious on Vader's perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that.
And one thing that I've always thought about is when people go into the Force, so we're talking like Mortis or the World Between Worlds or the Dagobah experience in the Magic Tree, as John Williams calls it, the Magic Tree, or the cave, the failure in the cave, as Yoda calls it, is that these are all like subconscious projections of archetypes that they're dealing with. And so I think it would be just really, really interesting to explore that. And it would be weird Star Wars that I would love for the rest of my life, where they actually are experiencing visions of each other in the wrong places.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. And then they actually have some sort of confrontation in the Force. It would be a cool way to handle it.
It's doing that thing that like Rebels and Rise of Skywalker and the book cave or whatever, the library tree, like the voices of all the, the Jedi sort of swirling around. It's kind of a similar thing in this episode with when he's trying to contact Qui-Gon. So we've got a lot of question marks too with like, Yoda says, teach you to commune with them, I will. And then eventually, Obi-Wan like ends up becoming a Force ghost. And then, Anakin ends up a Force ghost we kind of know. So, they could kind of do
at least in Legends, it was 10 years after Revenge of the Sith that he started to communicate with Qui-Gon. So
okay,
right on schedule.
Oh, right, yeah.
Probably by the end of this.
I see what you're saying. Like he's getting around to it. Yeah, I wondered if this was maybe like the first time he's going to succeed, and then also we know that in that upcoming book, like Luke and Anakin are supposed to have a conversation too, which is cool. So. I think.
Cool.
I don't know. That was in some article on.
That would be wild. And now we get to the arrival of Reva, third sister, at the Fortress Inquisitorius, which is a cool thing that we've only seen in the comics and in Jedi Fallen Order to this point. It's on a cool sea and it looks like a triangle. 3 points again. We have 3 Inquisitors. She just owns her walk into this fortress. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. I love it. And we get the amazing music behind her.
Yeah, she gets her own sort of like Reva version of the Imperial March or something. Yeah, it's very good. Very good music there.
Yeah. And of course, Fifth Brother is like, and you spoke to Vader yourself? Like you have his phone number? He never gave me his phone number.
Yeah. And he's so jealous, he like slams her on the table or something. He's always throwing her around. Anyway, moving on. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. But she tells him off, and they launch these like egg-like probes, which are the probe droids, but they look cool because they look like little eggs. Yeah. And they launch into the air, and there's 3 of them.
They almost look like Yoda's little ship in Revenge of the Sith in hindsight.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously it's the things from Empire, I guess.
Yeah. And they back to Obi-Wan and Leia, they come to the place that they're supposed to be, and no one is there.
Yeah.
No one is there. And this is a common thing that happens in fairy tale and folklore, where a message is interrupted or the literal devil stands in the way and sends the wrong message. And that's sort of what's happening, right? The probes are arriving on the planet, and that's what delays the people from being in the right place at the right time. And it's because sometimes when we're dealing with things don't align for us. Right. We psychologically, we're at the right place, but something else has interrupted it, or something else is in the way. And Leia does the right thing, which is to say, well, we're going to have to figure this out on our own. Mm-hmm. Right. And so they go and they spot the transport, and they run into they spot the transport, but they previously were talking about how he's like, if anyone asks, you're my daughter and you do not speak. and she's like, okay, I can't speak, or I don't like to speak. And he says, I don't speak, or you don't speak. So like the third option again. And to me, this is so interesting. Again, I talked about how this is like the spiritual labyrinth that they're in, this like thing where he's going to be dealing with the different archetypes of himself and dealing with these different things mm-hmm. that he needs to face. And the first thing he is facing is his internal feminine in the form of Leia, his lost anima. And he says that his internal feminine does not speak.
Interesting.
Well, it speaks.
Yeah.
She speaks.
The truck shows up and he's like completely tongue-tied. And so she just kind of jumps in and...
Yeah. And so this is like dealing with the lost feminine aspects of yourself. And he goes through it this episode. We'll go into that when he gets to it, when he starts talking about his family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot. And he gets absolutely destroyed that no one is there. He's like, there's no one coming. We shouldn't have trusted at this person. There's no good people in the galaxy. Like, he's so sad. Yeah. And she's like, I actually hope.
Yeah, this is where he says, like, not everyone is good, Leia. Like, he kind of snaps at her, right? Isn't that the scene?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not everyone is good, Leia. Yeah. But then we get this transport with the man I called the mole man when I first saw him, because he literally looks like a mole man. Yeah. And his name is Freck, and he is voiced by Zach Braff from Scrubs.
Yep. And it sort of occurred to me that that's a weird sort of Padme connection, because he was in a romantic movie. I don't know if it's a rom-com or what you'd call it, but he did that movie Garden State, and he falls in love with Natalie Portman in that. I haven't actually seen it, but
what?
So get a little Padme connection there.
And symbolically, all I can think of for this mole man is that moles are native to the darkness. They literally live in the dark, in the dirt, and they're digging just like they're natural miners. This is their home. He's just living his life, but he is blind, because moles are often blind or can't see well, because they live in the dark, so they can't see very well. He's just blind to the Empire. It's just his view of the galaxy is things are better off with order, and how he lives his life. He's just living his life, and is more than willing to not see what the truth is about the Empire.
Yeah, sort of like the guy, I guess the uncle that Bale was talking to in the first episode. A lot like that. I'm not...
And in some ways it was exactly what Obi-Wan was not 2 episodes before.
Yeah. Right, exactly. He was perfectly happy cutting his fish out in the desert. Yeah.
Cutting his desert fish and ignoring those that needed help.
Right.
So Leia, like we talked about, steps forward, and she's like, "I'm Luma, and this is my father, Orden." Okay, let's talk about these names. Oh man. Luma is sort of like light. I think you wrote that.
I think
when we talked about it.
Lumos is Latin for light. I don't know where I knew that from, but yeah.
And High Republic was longest called like Project Luminous.
Yeah,
Project
very
Light.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah. And Orden is a lot like order or the old way, which is so interesting, or like stuck in the old way. And you had some thoughts on Leia being light.
Yeah, she's sort of he's sort of in this spiritual, the valley of the shadow of the death, and fearing evil and his shadow and all that stuff, and so she's sort of the whenever you have like a painting, of like a dark room, and then you have a candle in the window, that's like God's light or goodness, so she's sort of the thing that's getting him through here, and
and it's a repeat of the metaphor that we heard in the transport too.
Yeah,
right. Like, what happens when you turn on the lights?
Right.
Well, you get hope, and you get relief, and you get options, I guess. I just want to point out Leia means child of heaven, and Luke means light giving.
Nice.
Yeah. So like these names are purposeful, and I really just love these like fake names that they gave them, because like, oh, these are chosen names, right? Orden. Yeah. It's good. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
Well, I picture, in George's writing, he always describes the dark side as like these dark clouds that obscure the Jedi's vision. They can't see through the Force because it's clouded by darkness. And, so I picture like I think there's a shot of the sky when Anakin is kind of out on the deck or the balcony in episode 2. And you see like the beautiful like suns breaking through the clouds. And, that to me is very evocative of Luke and Leia, that idea of, the light sort of breaking through the darkness or whatever. And, it's sort of like as a parent, kids are kind of the thing that keep you from despair when stuff gets hard, kids are you kind of don't want to let the sort of walls close in around you because it's like, oh, well, I got to look after my kids. And a similar thing happening here, in the novel, The Road, it's like, the world has ended and there's cannibals all around them. And the metaphor they use is they talk about like carrying the fire or something to that effect. Like, are we still carrying the fire, Dad? And, here I think that, the Force is light, light is hope. Leia talks about light in the sequel trilogy. That's kind of something we don't hear her say until after Ben Solo enters the world. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, no, and and Maz also talks about it as well.
Yeah.
You feel it, the light
right
calls to you. Yeah. So they Freck ends up chatting them up, and they say they're from Tall. And I love how Leia's like, and we love the Empire.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But no, they're just trying to fit in, right? They're just trying to fit in, and it's expected for you to behave a certain way when you're with supporters who are maybe, again, blind to what the Empire truthfully is, or benefit from, in a way, this is very apropos for our day and age, fascism, right? White supremacy, the dominator culture, patriarchy, imperialism, like, oh, it's easy. You just like go with what the dominator culture says you need to do.
Yeah.
And, that's what we're getting from Freck. And Freck is more than willing to be like, yeah, these guys are weird to the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
He doesn't even question it, because in so many ways, like, they've done tons of research on people who just went along with like what the Nazis did, or when we have people in authority or people in uniform, people are really, really psychologically willing to do exactly what they're being told to do when somebody in an authoritarian position or an authority position tell them to do something. Stanford has done tons of psychological experiments on this. And really, who are you to question if your life is okay?
Yeah.
Right.
And you have like Luke too. Luke said he doesn't like the Empire, but there's nothing I can do about it right now. And yet in the same movie, he's talking about like, well, I could join the flight academy, and that's a way to get off this rock. And, it's sort of like, it is the path of least resistance, basically, in that world. Stuff's
but
bad.
You don't know what the true cost is, right? That's what's being said. The stormtroopers show up, and they've been waiting for their transport, and so Freck's like, "I'll give you a ride. I'm just a guy who hauls miners," right? And the stormtroopers ask Obi-Wan and Leia, "Are you a miner?" And he says, "No, I'm a farmer from a long way away from here." And they sort of managed to fudge their way through an explanation that, they were brought here to see where Obi-Wan had met Leia's mother, or Luma's mother, and he accidentally calls her Leia, and then Leia covers up for him, and they cover up for each other. And it's when I see her mother's face. Oof. Okay, let's talk about the sound design. So there's a sound that is used in Star Wars Rebels and other places within the saga, and it's like this, like, sort of like high pitched squeal, and it's in the sound design when Leia is looking at him.
That's
and determining that he's been lying.
The sort of like trios of notes, like doodle-doo, doodle-doo,
yeah,
doodle-doo, doodle-doo. Yeah.
Well, it's like, like it's like a little like that sort of thing. It's hard to explain until you hear it, but they used it really heavily with Ezra in the beginning when he didn't understand he had the Force. And it was sort of a way to show he was using the Force when he didn't understand that he was. Anyway, so they used it for Leia in this moment. So she's using the Force. She's using the Force to determine that he is lying. And then she straight up asks him, "Are you my real father?" Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. And he says, "I wish I could say I was." Okay. I have many thoughts on this. First of all, thank you, Star Wars, for feeding my Obadala hearts. I've read a few fics back in the day, Obadala, and it was super fun to explore, and it was awesome. I also think that on some level, what the writers were intending was that he just wishes things could be different, and that Leia had a father who knew her or could be there for her, that understood what Anakin was like, or that Anakin could be there. And then he goes into the story of what it was like when he joined the Jedi, and he's going through it, his like regret and missing a brother or a sibling, missing like just glimmers of what his parents looked like. Nothing like faces, just hands and stuff. What did you think of this?
Well, obviously, in Return of the Jedi, Leia has the famous line about she remembers her mother, and it's like this very vague impression. It's like a flash of memory, a feeling, she says, I think. And, that's, of course, the topic that's going to be debated endlessly as long as Star Wars is a thing, because people have strong opinions about what that means, and if it's just...
Oh, we're probably going to get her pulling the memory of what Padme looks like straight from Obi-Wan's head.
I think that's exactly where they're going, because, that's Kylo's mom, and he pulls images from people's heads. So, I think so too. But, here we're sort of getting another version of that, where Obi-Wan has a fuzzy impression of like an infant baby boy. And he's like, I think I had a brother. And man, that's sad. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful line.
Like the Jedi aren't right to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, the kids aren't given any choice in this matter. They're.
Yeah. Obviously he was taken, right? It's just like, it's just a different sort of removing the choice from people so that they never feel attachment to their family is so back asswards. Like, I have a lot of problems with the Jedi dogma, and he doesn't even understand what he's lost, but he grieves the loss of his brother on more than one way, right? Like, so the brother he made, he had a new family. He was attached to the Jedi. He was attached to Anakin. They just replaced the family to a monastical order that could be useful. Yeah. That's messed up, friends.
Yeah, he's looking on the bright side of it because he loves Anakin and stuff, but and he respects Yoda, obviously. And
he loved the Jedi Order, or at least that's what he thought. But he was indoctrinated into it from such a young age. When did he ever get the opportunity or the choice to choose something different?
Right.
Or to even understand what could be different.
It's a little like Mando, but Mando was like 8 or 9 years old or something, whereas Obi-Wan doesn't even remember his family really. I
mean, it's like Leia, but she's adopted and her family loves her a great deal. Same with Luke, right?
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to say, but it's not like there wasn't anyone else to care for Obi-Wan. The Jedi just take kids. And I really don't like that about the Jedi. Like, I really don't like that you can't have a family and also find balance and peace within yourself enough to protect others within the galaxy.
Yeah. I mean, you can see how like maybe Lucas might draw that from history or something, but it's really hard to imagine that, given all that's happened in this story or all these different stories, that like, sort of when Rey and Finn go like build a hut somewhere, that they're going to be like, well, let's start kidnapping kids again. That worked out pretty well the first time, It does seem like that's a thing that would have to change, and that, you know, maybe kids would have some say in the matter, almost like Ben Solo, but, you know, I don't know. Who knows if he really was super jazzed about it.
I don't know. I mean, I think Luke tried to do things differently too.
Yeah, I think
right?
so.
Like, I think he did, but I don't know if it was differently enough. It's hard. It's a hard concept, and I'm not a huge fan of the stealing kids for their own good. Anyways, they arrive at the gate after the stormtroopers say goodbye. Gosh, there's been so much already this episode. The probe droid, they're stopped at the gate and they're like, "Who are you? And come down here." And then the probe droid arrives, and we get this amazing like shootout scene with Obi-Wan. There's 3 red lines that form the gate, 3 red lines that form the gate. And they manage to escape, and they don't even kill Freck. They just knock him out. He just knocks him out. He bonks him on the head, knocks him out. And we get introduced to the ex-Imperial Tala, who is played by Indara Varma, who I fell in love with from Rome, but was also in Game of Thrones. Amazing actress.
Yeah, I think she played Pedro Pascal's wife in Game of Thrones, or
significant other partner. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Person that missed him the most and was willing to kill people over him.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. And then we find out that they've been mining vitrium, or Vintrium is the mineral that they've been mining. And I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it sells for 500 credits a gram. That's a lot of that's a lot of money. Yeah. What she says is Haja had given them the right coordinates, but when the probes arrived, it waylaid her. And so this is really important because I talked about earlier how this is something that psychically we go through, right? Psychologically, we're like, I'm here. It's the right time, but nobody else is here. Or nobody else is ready. And it's like how you adjust to those sorts of situations, and how you get over that like feeling of being sort of not in the right place or not in the right time, and come over that. That's really important. I kind of call it like missing your connection. Right. And they still ended up in the right place because of Leia.
Right. Yeah. Trusting in the Force or whatever.
Yeah. Or like saying like, we've got to continue on. We can't just like stay here. And that's so her, like, especially New Hope, when they're like trying to escape the Death Star. And she's like, well, somebody's got to save our skins. Yeah. Like, you know, she grabs the gun and takes it and shoots her way out. Yeah. Into the garbage chute, flyboy. Yeah. That's so Leia. And then they arrive at the settlement, and Leia's like, I didn't mean to run away. And starts to kind of have a moment like, I've caused all of this by being who I was. What did you think of that like consolation moment with the two of them?
I don't really remember that exchange that well. I mostly remember, just the stuff with the droid and talking about the communication stuff. I don't really remember the lines before that. Yeah.
So it's like just when they're in the alleyway waiting to go into the droid shop or into the repair shop, she says, I didn't mean to run away. I didn't mean to basically cause this to happen. And he comforts her and he says, it's not your fault. And I really, really appreciated that moment because it gave them time to sort of both process that like what was happening to them wasn't necessarily their faults or anything, but like that, they have to still get through this.
Yeah, it's
but
that idea that rebelling or resisting is actually difficult and like the violence and all that is not like in that sociology 101 experiment where they give you some like really crazy, complicated scenario that ends in violence, and then they're like, "Whose fault is it?" And they always like blame the victim. Is like what all the students do, instead of like the mugger or whatever it ends up being at the end. But
yeah, they travel safely into the shop, the repair shop, which we are introduced to the loader, Nedby. Oh my God, I have a new droid I love.
Yeah, great droid.
And he is not programmed to communicate. So she introduces Lola, LOLA 59, to him. And they sort of have a little moment, which is adorable. And, Leia rightfully asks, well, what if he has something to say? And I really love this moment where Tala says, actions speak louder than words.
It's so good.
Ooh, let's talk about that. This is such an important statement because you can talk all day long on the internet or on a podcast. And if you do nothing to stop the injustices in your local area or the injustices around you, then you've actually not done nothing. And your actions will do more for people than just yelling about it on the internet.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of anecdotes about, some harmful rhetoric crops up at work, and, the idea that the best allies are the ones who don't really talk about it. They take action and help, which is probably something we could all learn from. But, yeah. It's also just cute and charming that the droid, it's sort of that stereotypical dad thing of like, instead of like saying, "Oh, I love you," and being the sort of Bail Organa, like ideal dad that we all sort of picture, maybe there are dads that just like will fix the car, or change the oil, that, which is a form of love too. I kind of like that. It's a cool droid concept for sure.
Yeah, and I liked that he was willing to protect them right away.
Yes, that was very cool.
Yeah. And we find out that this is actually a safe house, which is a journey on the path, which has a lot of historical sort of parallels to modern storytelling or to historical things that have happened.
Yeah. Just like the idea of like sheltering, like basically people who are fleeing like persecution, like Jewish refugees in the, Nazi occupied nations in the 20th century, or like the Underground Railroad in the 1800s, like this idea of like sort of the unsung heroes of history, sort of doing the right thing and, risking your life for the benefit of somebody else. It's kind of beautiful that Star Wars took that idea for the Jedi, because they're essentially a persecuted religion, like we kind of said before that, just their existence makes them, a target for execution.
And, they talk about how it's gone past just trained Jedi into anyone who is force sensitive. And so it's not even, people who have sort of joined the religion. It's also people who are just born a certain way, which is, you can't change how you were born or your connection to the force. Oh boy. And the end goal is to get them to Jabim and give them new identities and then send them on their way. Really sort of like very Underground Railroad. Just giving them an opportunity to live new lives. And Obi-Wan, and what I love about this room, this like sort of safe house room, is that it's all covered in wood paneling, which feels, I don't know, just not Star Warsy.
Yeah.
Like it feels so unique. Like this feels like a very safe place. And so people have actually used like things to carve into the walls, right? Which writing in Star Wars is also extremely rare. And people are using it and carving Arvash into the walls. And Pablo Hidalgo said the writing is on the wall as like a vague tweet. So I'm sure we'll find out in the next couple of days what somebody spotted and translated from Arabic.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I looked up to see if anybody had translated the full thing, and I think the main takeaway is that that little boy in the one episode the Haja was helping, that boy was supposed to be like Corin Horn from like the EU or Legends, and then so maybe his father's name is apparently on the wall in here, so I don't know.
Interesting.
Little Easter eggs, probably from Pablo.
Probably. He does love all sorts of different things. And we get this thing, and Obi-Wan is like, Quinlan? And yeah, Talis says like, oh yes, he's helped out others before. And Quinlan Vos has some of the best Star Wars, The Clone Wars episodes. He's an amazing character. And then there was supposed to be a bunch more series or sort of bunch more episodes made with him and Ventress. And they're actually a love story that was originally written for teleplay by Katie Lucas. So that's George Lucas's daughter, where they fall in love and they hang out as like sort of like bounty hunters. And Quinlan is sort of in a way kind of using her. He briefly falls to the dark side as a general to Dooku. This is all spoilers for Dark Disciple. I apologize. But it's sort of like Ventress is using this as an opportunity to sort of heal from her wounds. I won't explain how it ends, but Quinlan ends up coming back from the dark side. And now we see that he is still around because Dark Disciple is canon. It was the first canon book after the Disney acquisition. So cool stuff there. But he says on the wall, only when the eyes are closed can we truly see. And they're like, what? See what? And it's like, the way. Okay, let's talk about this. What did you think of this?
So I guess that I was sort of thinking about the path to freedom or whatever, like that tunnel, there's that long tunnel that Leia is supposed to escape through, and I think that's just sort of reinforcing the symbolism of like trust in the Force to sort of to get to safety, and then you won't be sort of that clouded by fear, that idea.
And this ties back to a couple of things for me personally. The lesson that Obi-Wan teaches Luke, that your eyes can lie, don't trust them.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call. Yeah.
Right? That idea, like you have to listen to your feelings, your internal senses. And really, this is also about exploring and understanding what is important to you and what your own path is. You can only do by listening to yourself, listening to your internal journey, and that will help you on your external journey. And this all ties back to a concept in the Tao Te Ching, which is by Lao Tzu, which is often used, I fully know, by Star Wars creators to understand the Force, right? So the push and pull of the universe and the balance between things is really understood in the Tao, right? So like we think of the Taoist symbol of the yin and yang, right? This is the idea, right? That things exist in each other. But there's a part to the Tao Te Ching in chapter 43 where Lao Tzu is talking about the way of water. And he says, it offers no resistance, but overcomes the hardest substance. That which offers no resistance can enter where there is no space. Few in the world can comprehend the teachings without words or understand the value of non-action. Okay, so this is the thing that has blown my mind a lot. So when we keep our eyes open, We are expecting to face the world and take it on, right? Action. When we close our eyes, we are listening to ourselves and we are flowing like water. Ursula K. Le Guin actually wrote this amazing sort of essay on the way of the water. And I just want to talk about it a little bit briefly before going into sort of what I think it means for Anakin and Obi-Wan and how this is really, really important. So water is the weakest and most yielding thing in the world. He calls it because water chooses the lowest path, not the high road. It gives to anything that's harder than itself. It offers no resistance. It flows through obstacles and accepts whatever comes to it. It lets itself be used, divided, defiled, and yet continues to be itself and go in the direction that it must. The tides of the oceans obey the moon, while the greatest currents of the open sea keep on their ways beneath. The water is deep at rest and yet is in motion. The stillest lake is constantly, invisibly transforming into vapor and rising in the air. A river can be dammed and yet diverted, yet its water is incomprehensible. It will not go where there is not room for it. A river can be drained for human uses that it never reaches the sea, and yet those bypasses and usages, the water remains and pursues its course, flowing down and on, above ground, underground, breathing itself into air and evaporating, rising into mists, clouds, fogs, returning to the earth as rain and refilling the sea. Water doesn't have only one way. It has infinite ways. It takes whatever way it can and utterly opportunistic, and all life on earth depends on the passive, unyielding, uncertain, adaptable, changeable element. And she goes on to say that water is generous, tolerant, and does not hold itself apart. It lets itself be used by any in need. Water goes on, as Lao Tzu says, to the lowest places, the vilest places, accepts contamination, accepts foulness, and yet comes through again, always itself pure, cleansed, and cleansing. So this is what Obi-Wan is transforming into, being like water. And this is where the high ground is the place of violence, not peace. And Anakin is like a hard rock. And Obi-Wan in this episode moves around him like water.
Yeah, he runs from battle when Vader ignites his saber, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. And he flows through the canyons, and it's the transformation that we needed from him, because in The Phantom Menace, he's like stubborn and hard, and he judges others, and he's not willing to get his hands dirty. And who he is in A New Hope is willing to go into a hive of scum and villainy. He's willing to do whatever it takes to flow around, but not be violent.
Yeah.
He's willing to evaporate.
Yeah, it's sort of like, it's like a kind of enlightenment, but it's not really nirvana. It's not like the eradication of the self. It's more like he's achieving, like, he's on the path.
The flow of the universe. Yeah. The flow of the universe.
Like having such a confidence in yourself and who you are that you can just sort of accept, things like, if you cut me down, you can't annihilate Obi-Wan-Kenobi. I'll be more powerful than you can imagine.
And understanding that there's a flow to the universe and that you are just a part of that flow to the universe. I do these episodes called The Way of the Force, and we talk a lot about Alan Watts, which is also an influence on some of the Star Wars creators, and and probably George too, because Alan Watts was lecturing a lot and Campbell and Alan Watts were friends. So that understanding of Zen Buddhism, and that things go in and out and flow, and that you are a piece of the galaxy, and you are not separate, and that you need to figure out the way of water or the way of the force, right? The way of the force being this oneness with it, and the flowing where you need to be is absolutely what is going on with Obi-Wan.
And
where he's
Lucas
going.
and Star Wars both are very like romantic, and like it's that idea of, you know, whether it's like the British romantic poets or like the sort of transcendental American thinkers who like went off into the woods or whatever to like think about the woods and stuff. But it's like that idea that like, you know, because, you know, Universal tampered with my movie or THX got, you know, cut to shreds. It's like, I don't trust these institutions to do right by me. And so like, you know, knowledge can't come from an institution, you know, truth can't come from a book, you know, the sacred Jedi texts. It comes from within you when you're calm, at peace, as Yoda would say. Stuff all kind of flows together. But anyway, I think, you know, that's related to that idea that, you know, you don't sort of like have to fight for knowledge, you know, like Leia, you know, it just sort of comes naturally if you are like confident enough to like listen, I guess, and trust it.
Yeah. If you're feeling the flow of the energy, right? If you're like water, you'll flow where you need to go, or it will guide you, even if it's through rough places. I just love it. And so it's making me reevaluate the concept of the high ground. I have the high ground, Anakin. I'm like, you shouldn't have had the high ground.
Yeah.
Right? Because you needed to go low with Anakin to be there for him.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because the water was needed down below, not above. It's making me reevaluate everything. Anyways, I love how Obi-Wan talks about how he's made mistakes, and Tala is like, I can't imagine Obi-Wan Kenobi ever doing anything wrong. And this is like bringing back the idea, like Anakin and Obi-Wan were considered to be like the perfect Jedi, the poster children of the Republic. And there's a lot of like the TLJ vibes for Luke, like, oh, the legend Luke Skywalker, you know, how could he have ever failed anyone? You know? And he says, just Ben these days, like, nope, I made a mistake and I am suffering for it. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Luke says, you don't need Luke Skywalker. And Obi-Wan kind of did the same thing with Bail, you know?
Exactly. They open the tunnels and there's these like cool circles, and it's dug underneath the settlement so that they can freely escape as they need to through the, you know, sort of a knock on the door, searching your premises, but it, you know, the droid can't talk. So no answers required. This actually makes me think if C-3PO is one of those, like when he says one of my first jobs was programming binary load lifters. Is this the droid he was programming?
I mean, I thought that's sort of maybe what they were doing with this guy, but
because they can't communicate any other way.
It's interesting because, I mean, like Campbell talks about language being like binary and stuff like that. And so, like almost like he can only think in terms of code, you know?
Or only in ones and zeros, on or off, sort of like the Force. Yeah. Cool stuff. But Obi-Wan doesn't go down the tunnel. He senses Vader, and it's like he gets like gut punched in the Force. And I really this Vader scene is very hard. It's very dramatic. He's such a dramatic person, Vader. But he almost like walks down the street like a biblical plague. Like this is to the biblical stuff that we talk about, like the families that are able to like hide and not look out into the street and ignore like the plague Moses, you know, or the plague that Moses puts on Egypt. don't lose anybody. But if you looked out and you left your house or you were looking outside, you could lose a loved one. It was wild. What did you think of that?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about, like, you say that, it sounds like the movie Bird Box, where, like, you don't look out the window, or else, like, this invisible monster will, like, kill you. But, yeah, that's a thing that happens in horror a lot, I guess.
Yeah, like, you can't look directly at the darkness.
Yeah, kind of like
why
Medusa, almost, stuff like that.
Yeah. And metaphorically, it's because, like, when we actually see our darkness, where it's usually projected out onto something else. That's the only way that we can see these shadows, these archetypes inside of our subconscious that we haven't dealt with. And it hurts us.
Mm-hmm.
When we actually deal with it and we see it out there, we react in fear, in pain, in anger to it. That's metaphorically what's happening with Vader, with Obi-Wan being utterly afraid of what he is about to face.
Yeah. And also, like, notably, the episode kind of starts with, I mean, you see his sort of burnt flesh and stuff, but, like, also you get, like, a pretty good look at his face and, like, sort of looking directly toward the camera. And so you kind of acknowledge the humanity up front, which is sort of it's a reversal of, like, you know, how a lot of us saw Star Wars as kids, where, like, maybe, you know, I remember seeing Empire Strikes Back and had one idea of Vader, and then I saw Return of the Jedi, and it's like, oh, like, Vader is not what I thought at all, you know? So I think that's kind of powerful, that obviously the prequels have their whole arc that's even more tragic, but, you know, here we start with Anakin's face practically in this episode, and then he's just like this black storm cloud of the cape rolling through the streets.
Yeah, like, and just, like, killing innocents, right? This is what I said earlier, which is, like, Vader is making his pain everybody else's problem in the galaxy.
Yeah. Almost like he's using that concept of, like, the compassion thing to draw Obi-Wan out with, you know, to get him to try to stop it or whatever. But
Jedi hunt themselves, right?
And usually there's, like, a sort of twisted, gross practicality to when Vader causes pain. You know, like, a lot of the time, you know, it's not like he just is going to kill everybody in sight. You know, he's doing it for a sort of a purpose, but it's a very dark side purpose to draw Obi out. So, yeah, he is so terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, good job, creative team, for, like, I'm like, I know Obi-Wan survives. I know Vader's okay. I know Leia's okay. And yet I'm scared for all of them. Like, I'm like, I don't know what is going on with it, that I'm literally so scared all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I was scared for Obi-Wan last episode too, facing Reva. Like, that was brilliant storytelling. And it all comes down to like, the concept of, like, the feeling camera. Like, we feel the emotions strongly of Obi-Wan and the other characters that are going through all of these different things. Really, really, really important. I also want to bring up another concept, which we get a little bit more of inside of this, which is we get the idea of the gazed gaze. So that's Gaze, gaze. So it's the feeling of being witnessed, right? Fully being witnessed by another human and seeing all of the things, all of the emotions internally. And what we're actually getting is the commentary from Vader doing that in this upcoming scene. So paying attention to that is really, really important. This helps us understand more about what is going on internally in Obi-Wan, to have this commentary from Vader. So he runs away to the rocky outcrops, or to the rocky hills that look like former, like, leftover mining area, I guess, right? And we see Vader draw his weapon, and he says, "You cannot run, Obi-Wan." And we get a nice play of, I think it's just French horns of the Force theme.
Yeah, whenever sort of Vader shows up at like a really fateful moment, like his confrontation with Ahsoka and stuff like that, or with Luke.
People have also pointed out that they hear some of the notes of Vader's A New Hope theme as well, which is really like it starts to form into in the Imperial March, or it's connected to the Imperial March in Empire Strikes Back. I have never gone on that onto that in the podcast, but I definitely will for a deep dive into the music when I get around to it. So he runs away. Obi-Wan runs away and ignites his lightsaber, which is all blue. So he looks like he's bathed in like water or this like coolness. Yeah. And Vader emerges from the dark side, and all we can see is the 3 lights on his chest. And it's like the big panel on the top and the 2 green lights on the bottom at start because of how far away he looks. And we get this fabulous line from Obi-Wan, "What have you become? Yeah. I am what you made me." Okay, Anakin.
So good.
He's like fully out there. Like, yeah, dude, you did this to me. And Obi-Wan continues to move through the lowest pathways, right? He doesn't go up on the hill. He never tries for the high ground again. He's just flowing through the lowest pathways. And we see the loader leave. We see Reva finding the path, of course, which some people are pointing out that this might be associated with Jedi Fallen Order and potentially what Trilla used on there trying to escape. Maybe Reva ended up using it at one point. That would be interesting. I'm not sure. What did you think of Reva finding the path?
In the sense that, when like Seer and Trilla were master and apprentice, they were like caught and captured by Vader, and that's how Trilla fell. Yeah, that's a good point. That isn't something I had considered, but yeah, this whole idea of the path, like clearly it's something that somebody on Twitter, I wish I could remember who said it, but pointed out that
it might have been Braddington.
Oh, Brad, did he bring up the thing about rebels?
I don't know.
There's apparently Vader says in like Rebels season 2 to Ahsoka, I guess, something about like, I know there's like a Jedi enclave, blah, blah, blah. Something like that about like, I know there's more out there. And so people are like, okay, that could mean, the path. It could mean Jedi Fallen Order. There's kind of a lot of like strings that you can sort of draw together.
It sort of makes me happy that maybe not all the Jedi are dead.
Right. Yeah. Like this episode really gives you the impression, I guess Tala has a line about, like there's, more of you out there and have come through here. So, which is nice. Yeah.
I still think that it's valuable that Luke is the one that ends up with Leia's assistance, of course, and support and bringing those lessons to him about especially Luke and Leia's mother. That was key. I think it's really, really important that Luke is still the Jedi that needs to fix the problem with Vader, with Anakin, right? It would be nice if not all the Jedi were dead. Yeah. I don't know. I know that breaks like 45 years of canon, but I don't care.
Yeah. I think like as time has gone on, like Filoni has been more and more cheeky about that, and just like,
I mean, he going out of his way to send Ezra out of the galaxy. Oh, Ahsoka's not a Jedi right now. Like, okay, let's just like be like, okay, a lot of people are just like, I've given up on the religion. Thanks. Mm-hmm. That would be fine.
Yeah.
Force users still exist. So Leia tells Tala to bring him back, even though they're on their pathway and their underground journey, right? So this is really significant. They're going through kind of like these circles in their underground path. So this is deep into the underworld for Leia, because Leia, of course, is also on a journey. Yeah. I think that I'll want to cover what she goes through in some future episode. I'm not sure if it'll be on this deep dive, but it's really, really fascinating what she does and how she goes through things. But we enter into the fight. This is like round 1, right? This must be round 1 of their fights. Do you think we'll probably get 3 rounds?
Yeah.
That's how Star Wars works. The years have made you weak. Oh, boo. So just like straight up calling out. Really, he is weak. He needs 2 hands to hold a lightsaber. He's been just cutting fish in the desert for 10 years. Yeah. It's hard, right? Vaderkin says, you should have killed me when you had the chance. And there's like, it feels like there's a tinge of, I wish you had killed me.
Yeah, I mean, the impression we get from a lot of the sort of ancillary media, like the comics and Vader Immortal, I suppose, and things like that, like the implication is kind of like, you know, Anakin is sort of that dramatic, you know, that sort of song lyrics idea of like, if I can't have Padme, then what am I still doing here? He's really just clinging to life, you know, he didn't put that suit on, you know, that's something that was done to him by someone who puppeteered him most of his life. So he's sort of like, you know, a ghost in his own body. Like that idea that he's a ghost haunting, you know, Mustafar and haunting the galaxy. He sort of got unfinished business. And, I feel like I've been saying that phrase about this show particularly. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he pulls down the mineral, lights it on fire, and is like, he just full on plays him like a puppet. He's like, you know what? You get to experience everything that I experienced. And he burns his shoulder, right? Like he drags him through the fire. And this really reminds me of the idea of like only the weapon that dealt the blow can heal it. Yeah. Right. It like this idea, but in some ways, like this is Obi-Wan's rebirth moment, because he finally can empathize with the pain that Anakin went through. I think he still needs to understand the reasons that Anakin fell to the dark side, and I hope that we get that. But Obi-Wan understands finally the pain that Anakin is in. And yeah, it was in the worst possible way. Like Anakin didn't say, or Vader didn't say like, dude, I'm in pain here all the time and you made me feel. He shows it to him, which is a very dramatic way to do it. But I think it was valuable for Obi-Wan to learn that, you know, he too is in hell. He too is not in a good place.
Yeah, he didn't want to go to Mustafar. He told Yoda, I can't kill Anakin. He gets there, he fights him, and he doesn't make any attempt to save him. You know, he thinks that he says, you are lost. You're a lost cause. The dark side has you. End of story, and leaves him there. And I think that's what haunts him, right? Is kind of the idea that he didn't help him. And then the revelations being A, he's alive, and B, Padme was right when she said there's still good in him, which is, you know, Obi-Wan would find that hard to believe for a while, I think.
Yeah, and had he been willing to flow and get down into the lowest part with Anakin, this may have been a different story.
Yeah.
Right. And we close out with, of course, Leia being captured. And oh my God, Moses Ingram, don't be afraid. Come closer. And this like very dark mother idea in the darkness, like the witch.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Maleficent or Ursula.
Yeah. Come closer, my dear. Ursula, the sea witch. Good. Like, you know, I'll get you where you need to go, or like Baba Yaga from a folklore perspective. I am prepping as we speak a dark feminine episode in Star Wars. We'll probably record it once we're done Obi-Wan, just because I want to see Reva's full journey. But yes, Reva, yes, this is important. This like Come closer, child. I don't bite. Like that sort of idea is so good. It's so good. So, Leia's been dealing with different motherly aspects, and Reva represents a dark mother to her. And I really, really appreciate Star Wars going there. And I'm really excited to see what happens next episode. Slight speculation. I think we will get a Vader Leia interaction of some sort, or at least Leia will see some of the horrors of Vader. She absolutely cannot stand him by A New Hope, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, she says in this episode, I try and imagine what my real father was like, and Reva knows probably better than a lot of people exactly what he's like,
Yeah, and she doesn't know until Luke tells her, but I really love this quote, and I'll leave it on this unless you have some other thoughts for that. This is from Star Wars Bloodline. She realized then something she had never fully understood before. So this is just before The Force Awakens. She always wondered what had led her father to turn to the dark side, to become Darth Vader. She imagined it came from ambition, greed, or some venial weakness. Never had she considered the turn might begin in a better place, out of a desire to save someone or to avenge a great wrong. Even if it led to evil, that first impulse might have been born out of loyalty or a sense of justice or even love. Had it been like that for her father, she could never know. But for the first time in a very long time, she had some sense of who Anakin Skywalker might have been before his fall, and of the goodness that must have survived in him throughout all the years of darkness. Yeah. All right. Let's leave it on that. All right, Alex, where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
Mostly on Twitter at Alex J. Kane with a K.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we look forward to the next week's episode. Make sure to come back and listen to this, as well as check out all of the links to the cool stuff I'll be posting in the liner notes about Ursula K. Le Guin, as well as the mining episode that I previously recorded on the dark side and how mining is a metaphor for it. All right. Take care, everyone. Cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our intro and outro is orchestral music by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love What the Force: Melody, Night Huntress, In Wild Space, Felicia, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Joe Allen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C, and Susan. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps others find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or our website, whattheforce.ca, and our Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.